Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome and thank you for joining us for our second of 4 summer cool sessions for creatives. My name is Lydia Thompson, and I'm chair of the Department of Art and Art History. Since March of this year, we have been dealing with the impact and ramifications of the coronavirus, which have changed our lives forever. The UNC community strongly supports and encourages our students to remain focused on their educational goals during these unprecedented times. The Department of Art and Art History and University Career Center in partnership created these summer cool sessions for creatives. This series will introduce you to professional creatives in diverse fields in the industry and reboot your energy levels to expand your potential and what is possible as you develop your career goals and build your network. As professional practicing artists, the creative process, for me at least, has always been at the center of my universe, and art and art history continues to evoke intellectual thought. It's used for problem solving. It assists us with understanding other cultures. It's a vehicle to express diverse political and social viewpoints, and more importantly, art enhances our world. For your information, in the National Endowment for the Arts March 2019 report, it stated the arts contributed more than $760 billion to the US economy. And in 2016, the North Carolina Arts Council reported that nonprofit arts and culture also consist of a $2 billion industry. It's even hard for me to pronounce those numbers because I don't even know what $1 million looks like. I don't know what $1 billion looks like. We've seen firsthand also how art can transform a culture, as we're witnessing firsthand with Black Lives Matter protests and movement. It is my hope in the world that we will continue to evolve and find solutions for equality and equity for all. This time, I'd like to thank both Dr. Suzanne Boyd, Associate Director and Career Coach, and Mr. A.J. Simmons, Assistant Director and Career Coach, for their administrative and technical support for this program. Today, Mr. Adam Justice, Director for the College of Art and Architecture Galleries, will serve as our moderator today, who also has a master's degree in art history. Just a couple of things before we get started, and we'll mention this before, and I'm hoping that we can touch on this maybe another time, but I would like to set up a time for a town hall meeting with my art students, art and art history majors, in the next 3 weeks. Ms. Denise Joseph is our guest speaker today. Ms. Joseph has nearly 15 years of client management experience working in the Chicago advertising industry. Currently, she is a curator for 9 Arts, which is a national art advisory firm located in Denver, Colorado. Some of their clients include the Maven Hotel in Denver, Colorado, the Colorado Convention Center, and they also work with multifamily residential properties and corporate offices. Denise, thank you so much for agreeing to join us this summer and sharing how creatives challenge and turn spaces, as you would say, into one-of-a-kind experiences. Thank you so much, Denise, and thank you very much for my team and colleagues.
Thank you, Lydia. It's nice to meet everybody. Dialing in from Denver. There's a little echo. Let me see if I can turn that down. Is that okay? Okay. Can everyone see my slides? Cool. All right. Well, it's a pleasure to meet you all. When Lydia asked me to do this, I was really excited because I think something like this at the start of your careers is really helpful to know. One of the biggest lessons I've learned throughout my time is you don't know what you don't know. So I think as much as you can network and expose yourself to professionals like myself, you'll just come to learn more and more. So thank you for being here. So Curator's Corner, I know you all saw the description for today's session. In terms of what we'll cover, I'll do a little bit about my background and kind of how I've gotten from where you were to where I am today. We'll do a behind the scenes look at the curatorial process. I've got 5 tips for you in terms of entering the art world. And then we've got a little bit of time at the back end for any questions. So to get started, in terms of my journey from A to Z, I thought it would be helpful to share a little bit of a timeline. So I graduated from Indiana University at Bloomington back in 2005. I graduated with a degree in business with a focus on marketing and a minor in art history. And so when I left Bloomington, I had my sights set on the big city of Chicago and ended up going up there that summer and kind of couch surfed and stayed with friends while I was looking for a job. And I ended up getting an offer for an entry-level position at an advertising agency in Chicago. So it was there and over the course of about the next 10 to 12 years that I grew in that position and eventually went into the position of an account director. So in that role, I was managing clients and accounts and the day-to-day of that account, and really had to strike a delicate balance between making sure my clients were happy in terms of keeping projects on strategy, on time, and in budget, while also advocating for the creative ideas that were presented. So if you're not familiar with the advertising industry, essentially there's a creative team composed of copywriters and art directors that are responsible for concepting the ideas that you see and are probably served up on your Instagram accounts every day. So I had to kind of be that liaison between the client and then the creative team. And I really enjoyed this role, but over time, I came to the realization that I didn't want to be my boss. And given enough time, that's where things, were heading. And so I started to kind of question, what might my next steps be? Where might I take this experience and go from here? So all throughout this time, my minor in art history, my love of seeing and experiencing art kept kind of knocking on my mind's door. And I determined that I wanted art to be a part of my everyday experience. I wanted it to be a part of my career. And so I knew that without having really previous experience in the art world, that to make that leap, it would probably require a master's in art history. So it was at that time I began applying to master's programs. I was accepted at the School of the Art Institute in Chicago, which was really great because I was able to go to school full-time, continue working at the advertising agency. The 2 buildings were just down the block from one another, so it worked out really conveniently to kind of keep going on both of these paths. I graduated from SAIC in 2016, and it was really at that time that I started to think, okay, I've got my degree, I've got all this amazing client experience, what might I do next? But I wasn't in a hurry to just kind of make a quick jump. I wanted to be really strategic and calculated about it. And so I spent about the next 2 years immersing myself into this new art world. And that kind of consisted of a few things, as shown here on the slide. On the left, I got experience doing speaking and panelist engagements. I went to a conference in Los Angeles and presented with the College Art Association of America. I was doing art reviews in Chicago of exhibitions I was seeing, and those were being published online with New City Art. I networked. I talked to anybody that would talk to me, whether it was my professors, students in my cohort, other professionals in this industry, gallerists, artists, and just try to understand really what are the options out here? What's everybody else doing? What are the jobs available to me? And I also spent that time applying to curate my own show. So I was accepted to curate an exhibition last fall, and it was a group show, and that just gave me so much experience in terms of working directly with artists, working with a gallery, doing the production of the show. And so through all these different experiences, I was learning what I loved, what I didn't love, and it started to kind of show me my path. And it was during this time that I was introduced to an art consultant in Chicago. And she took the time to kind of take me under her wing, and I was able to shadow with her during my free time. And it was during that time that I started to get exposed to, oh, she works with clients, she works with artists and galleries, and gets to have kind of these two worlds coming together. So then I knew I want to be an art consultant. And that was really great clarity, because then it helped me to focus my job search. And so this was kind of a pivotal moment for me back in late 2018. And I had been in Chicago since 2005, and I thought, I'm ready for a change of scene. I'm ready to do this new career path. And Denver just kept kind of coming back to me. I was ready for a bit more of an outdoor lifestyle. And so I literally Googled art consulting Denver. And at the top of the page results is this posting from 9.arts. And so the rest is kind of history. I applied to the position, went through the interview process, and ended up getting the job and moved out here last May. And so I think, the biggest lesson that I learned in reaching this point, there is no straight path. There is no red carpet for you. You just have to follow your passion, your intuition, embrace the experiences that you're given, think about how they might pivot into new opportunities for you, and really just continuing to talk to as many people as you can to learn about what is out there. And so, as Lydia mentioned, at 9.arts, we are an art consultancy based in Denver, but we have conducted projects in 34 states and counting. And so our clients, as shown here by the handshake, represent a gamut from hospitality, so hotels, to corporate office buildings, to luxury residential high-rises. But we also help clients with planning, strategic foresight, in terms of helping them to create art master plans, thinking about how a city might develop an art program in the public space. And so here in the middle, my role as a curator, I once again have found myself in that role as a liaison. So I spend time interfacing with clients, but now instead of that creative team, I work with artists or galleries that represent artists. So I'm kind of playing that middle role once more. Our philosophy is using the power of art to transform ordinary spaces into extraordinary experiences. We really want to tell the client's narrative. What do they want people to take away about the art program? And so that's where we really dig in with them, understand what their vision is for the art program, and then take it from there in terms of presenting them artists that work to meet that vision. And here's just a couple examples of some of the work that we've done. I'll call a few out. In the upper left-hand corner, this is a work by Denver artist Mindy Bray, as shown at the Denver Convention Center. On the far right, this is the Dairy Block, also in Denver. It's a micro district. So if you imagine outside of this alleyway where there's these large-scale mural installations, sound installations, there's restaurants, bars, artisans shops. So it's really a cool area where you could spend a whole afternoon in Denver. Here in the center, we've got Jackson National Life, which is an insurance and financial company. So this is one of our corporate examples. Work here by Katie Stone. So this just kind of goes to show you the breadth of work that my company does. All right, so we'll get into some behind the scenes. So as I was starting to mention, when a client comes to us, some of the first conversations that we have with them is, what experience are you trying to create with the art program? What is the narrative or the vision that you want to impress upon people that have an encounter with the art program in your space? So once we tease that out, then I have a better idea of the kind of artist that I want to match to that vision. And so I'll research artists, and I've noted a couple of outlets that I look at here that will whose practice meets the aesthetic that we're going after. So if, for example, I'm doing the curatorial program for the new Marriott that's coming to UNC Charlotte's campus next year. And so when I started researching that market, I was looking at local galleries, co-ops like the McCall Center, and trying to find artists that I thought met the vision that we were after. I'll also contact nearby universities such as Lydia and start to understand the program and what students are doing there. We'll have internal brainstorms. It's, everyone's had different experiences. Oh, have you worked with so-and-so? And then also online commercial sites. Think about even Etsy, Saatchi, Artsy, all of those sites where there's an aggregate of artists that someone like myself can choose from. So I do the research, I find the right artists I think will fit our vision. And then step 3 is initiating that outreach. So I'll either contact the artist directly, or if they're represented by a gallery, I'll get in touch with the gallerist, as I want to learn more about their practice and, what is their available work? Are they interested in a commission? Here's my timeline, here's my budget. Does all of this sound good? And so once I have that confirmation, then I'm able to include those examples, potentially portfolio examples of the artist, or if I have the idea for a commission, maybe they'll do a quick design sketch. That all goes over to the client, presenting the work mostly on the artist's behalf. And then there's a little bit of back and forth, but ultimately the client will finalize their decision, and then I proceed with procuring the art. Any questions before I jump into the 5 tips? I think this would be a good time to pause. If there's any questions about the process itself that might interest you.
I have a question. Thank you for this presentation, Ms. Denise. I was wondering if artists ever reach out to you or your corporation, or are these spaces or companies, do they send out a call for artists looking to put work into their space? Is there a way for artists or gallery to, to get connected to an art consultant to get their work into their space because they want a commission?
That's a great question. My company has an online resource called Dotfolio, and artists are encouraged to set up an account there where they can submit images of their work. They can include medium, pricing, and essentially that becomes then a resource by which I'm researching through this library, because we tag things. It might be sculpture or, original work on paper, something like that, where I'm able to then refine my search, and it will return things based on what people have entered, what artists have entered into the library. Absolutely, you can reach out, kind of cold call, a consultant like myself, if you're able to get your hands on the email address, introduce yourself. In that case, I'd recommend that you have a nice, tidy PDF of your portfolio and that you could attach to the email so that you're really representing your work, providing them links to your website. Don't always expect a reply back, but do your best, get yourself out there, market your work. And I have some other tips further along for how I think, is successful to go about that. Any other questions?
I was curious if you ever had the chance to work with galleries in Denver or galleries in the areas that you work with.
Yeah, absolutely. So we do both. So we do not represent an artist. We are selling the work on their behalf. And so in the gallery space, if an artist is represented, then respectfully we go to the gallery and start to ask these questions, about their practice, available work, are they interested in commissions? And same with other local markets as well. So I'll just do good old-fashioned online research, top galleries in Charlotte, get the results returned, start thumbing through the pages. Oh, does that art match my vision? And then do the outreach from there. But it's not a requirement to be represented by a gallery, to be seen.
Denise, I'm wondering, during the proposal process, do clients ever have contact with the artist? And I'm asking that because, have you ever handled a case where kind of personalities clashed and maybe the artist decided they didn't want to work with this client or vice versa?
To answer your first question, no, that's something that, we're managing on their behalf. That's what they've contracted us for, is to handle those relationships, to handle the process of procuring the art. Clashing is probably a little strong of a word. Maybe there's something that the artist once tweaked about a design, or we get down the commission process, and when we're doing our check-ins and getting photos from the artist, maybe at 50%, the client's like, oh, I thought that blue was going to be a baby blue and not a navy blue. And so we'll take that feedback to the artist, and, they'll make modifications. And we've baked those milestones into our process so that everyone is along the same ride, that we've got those standard check-in points, and that no one's going off script and getting too far down the path. All right.
I have one more question. There's a lot of construction going on in Charlotte right now. And those spaces are going to be filled with art. Is there a way to figure out who is curating their spaces? Is there a way to navigate, or do you want to reach out to the institution, corporation, building, etc. personally? And then, so I'm trying to figure out, you build your relationship with the curator by, putting your portfolio out there. How do you create a relationship with a company to get your work in their space if you don't know the curator or the art consultant?
Right. That's a great question. Oftentimes outside construction sites, there'll be branding signage of the investment company, the developers, the folks that are involved in the project. As much as we can, we try to get our logo on a banner like that. So keep your eyes peeled for that. I think researching online, when you look up these projects, maybe there's a press release that's mentioned the curatorial company that they're working with. But that's a little bit of CSI work, I think. I don't have a straight answer, but I do think if you do the research, and even looking up art consultants in Charlotte, maybe on their websites, they have press releases about projects they've been contracted to do. Okay, I'll keep moving. Let's get into some tips. So my first tip, which may seem obvious, but you'd be surprised, is setting up an online presence for yourself. So Instagram is great for sharing real-time content, but it is not a substitute for a personal website. Curators and consultants like myself are conducting their research on their PCs, so you need to have a platform that is meeting the curator where they're at. The website should house images from your portfolio. You want to have high-res photos, maybe full shots, detail shots, details around the work. So what is the size, the medium? Is there any background on that series that someone like myself would find really helpful? and making it easy for me to understand the work and then also present the work, because I'll go back to that website page and maybe grab a little snippet the day of my presentation in order to properly represent the artist. I also think that it's helpful to have a downloadable PDF of your portfolio. So this can be like the highlight reel, if you will. Maybe it's 20 pages, 15, 20 pages. You've got, at the top, you're introducing yourself and your practice and your artist statement, go into some samples of work. And then in the back half, it could show your CV, the exhibitions or other related projects that you've been in that someone like myself would find helpful. Your website, you also, like I just mentioned, want to have that about page. So someone like myself if I'm trying to do a hyperlocal project, I want to know where that artist is from. Does that meet the criteria that I'm looking for? What is their outlook? What is their artist statement? Just so I can get to know the artist better. And then your contact page, something like as easy as sharing your email. I know some artists will use a form by which I would have to fill out and be contacted. If you feel safer or for privacy reasons, prefer that route, that's great. I personally love when I can just snag an email and right away email the artist, because I'm, multitasking throughout the day. And so it's just helpful to get those things off my plate. And I wanted to actually show an example of one of your faculty members. Let me see if I can just drag this over. Thomas Schmidt, who I am working with for the Marriott project. And this is a first-class example of an amazing artist website. So take your cues. We've got immediately, I'm getting a sampling of the different kind of work that Tom is doing. I can click in and learn more about the series where the exhibition took place. He's got the medium, the date it was made. So all that detail that I was just talking about. His about page is, introducing himself to someone like me, his experiences. He's got any kind of press releases that he's been a part of, writing he's done, and then how to contact him. And Tom, throughout this process, also shared with me a downloadable PDF of his portfolio. So again, this is what I was mentioning in terms of, the artists introducing themselves, going into a couple of the series. And you can see here, we've got a full photo and then a detail shot, all the excellent details of the work itself. And so this goes on, but just to say, these are some really great examples that you could, mimic in your own personal way, in your own personal touch, but to see how it's done right, I thought that'd be helpful. Okay. Next tip, understanding the business side of things. So I think that one of the biggest challenges artists navigate as they get their career path moving forward is understanding the business aspects. So I have some kind of sub bullets here. So the first one is establishing a universal price list. So for the work that you've created, how are you pricing it? This ensures that the pricing is remaining consistent within the market. So whether you talk to me in Denver or someone like me up in New York, you're sharing consistent pricing and moderating that yourself. The pricing should be reflective of what's called retail pricing. So if you end up working with being represented by a gallery or a consultant or whatever it might be, you have to expect that retail price is shared 50-50. And so when you're pricing your work, getting to that established retail price, you need to think about the time, the materials, the labor that you've put in, and then some, and how that then gets divided amongst two parties, yourself and potentially a gallery or a consultancy. And so there's always wiggle room for some negotiating. Definitely just keep in mind how you're going to stay whole. You want to start to get comfortable with reading things like commission agreements. So these are legal documents that someone like myself would enter into a contract with you. It outlines, what's expected of the artwork that's being created. What are the timelines? What are the pricing, so that everyone's on the same page from the get-go. These are legal binding documents. They might look a little intimidating, but really a lot of them are boilerplate. You just want to become familiar and comfortable with reading them, maybe asking some questions, and then ultimately signing off on them. My next point I wanted to raise is that in this role, you're your own boss. So until you've reached maybe a status of having an assistant or a business manager, which I all hope you do. This requires, a lot of discipline and self-motivation. So as your own boss, you manage your own schedule. So time management is key. You have obligations, so make sure you plan out your schedule and your calendars. Put deadlines, self-imposed deadlines for your work so that you're able to meet your commitments. Marketing yourself. So back to Malik's question earlier, how do I get myself out there? This is not selling out, this is selling. So visit galleries, show up to events, network, let people know what you're up to in the studio. It is conversations that I'll have on a Friday night with a glass of wine at a gallery opening with an artist that come Monday morning, I'm working on a new project and I think, oh, that's who I want for the project. So let people know what you're up to. And again, back to the Instagram, the online website, your portfolio PDF, all of these things are going to help you market your work. And then my last point in terms of understanding the business side of things is find yourself a mentor. Do you have a professor, another artist, someone that you really respect and you think they've done it, they've made it, that you can bring into your sphere so that when you have questions, you don't feel alone, you've got someone to turn to that's going to help guide you. Next up, preparing for the interview. So some of you may try to do art full time. Some of you may split time between, doing a 9 to 5 and then art in the evenings and on the weekends. So I thought it'd be helpful to talk about the interview process and to firstly state that the interview is as much for you as it is for your potential employer. So you want to be asking questions about the hiring manager's style, like how do they like to manage? Inquire about the culture of the company. What is the work-life balance here? You want to understand how they support your professional development. Is there an annual stipend that allows you to take an evening class or a studio class? What does the career path look like from this entry role? How are you going to develop me? So do the responses that you're receiving in this interview sit well with you? Do they feel like it aligns to what you're looking for as much as what they're looking for? And I would also encourage you to think outside of the box when you're applying to these positions. Entry-level positions come in all shapes and sizes. And perhaps there's an organization or a company that you really respect and you want to work for, but maybe the position that's available isn't quite what you thought you would be doing. Don't dismiss it. Think about that as an opportunity to get your foot in the door. Because eventually a position in the department that you really wanted is going to pop up. You're already on the inside. They respect what you're doing. And they don't want to lose you. Training a new employee is very costly for a company. So it's better for them to keep you and get you into that role that you really want versus trying to hire someone anew. And I also want to share, it's okay to embrace more commercial opportunities, such as a graphic designer or an art director. These are very respectable positions, and they're going to put you in a place of learning the business, maybe contact with people that eventually will help you down the road for something that you wanted to do otherwise. So you're still able to to flex that creative muscle. It just might be in a different way than you expected. Our fourth tip, finding your professional voice. So by this, I'm referring back to the gallery openings when you're talking with an art consultant or a gallerist. What is your elevator speech? If you've got a minute of someone's time, how are you representing who you are, what you're doing, and what you want to do? And I would encourage you guys to, write it out, practice it with each other, get really comfortable hearing those words come out of your mouth. Because then when you're put into the position, this won't be the first time that you're saying it. Understanding your skill set and the skill set required of you in the role, whatever role you're going to pursue here after graduation, is really important, because knowing what's needed of you is how you're going to sharpen yourself. So for me as a curator, cultivating professional relationships is at the heart of what I do every day. I do it with my clients. I do it with the artists and gallerists. I have to earn their respect and their trust. And so for me, that means phone calls, that means email exchanges, asking a lot of questions, showing my interest and engagement so that someone feels like, oh, she's taking the time to get to know me. That means a lot. I want to share my practice. I do trust her with presenting the work on my behalf. So whatever those skills might be in a position that you're considering, think about how you can cultivate them further. And lastly, expand your practice. So I have a couple of thoughts here. Beyond, getting into an entry-level job or pursuing your studio practice, what are other outlets where you can further your artistic practice? So applying to residencies, grants, co-ops. I saw that the McCall Center is accepting applications for its upcoming program through the end of this month. Not sure if it's for students or for graduates, but keep your eye on those deadlines. These opportunities are indispensable because you're going to have access to maybe more studio space, other artists in that space. There's usually professional development involved. So think about how you can get yourself into one of these programs. Also think about where you might grow your actual practice in different ways. So original art might be one facet, but also think about reproductions. So I want to show another example of an artist here in Denver. Thomas Evans goes by Detour. And Detour, his practice ranges from, and I'll just kind of go through a couple of these, large-scale public art installations, interactive visuals and immersive spaces, to doing portraiture. But in addition to making all of this amazing original work, he's got a shop link on his website where he's selling reproductions of the work for a pretty affordable price. So if someone like myself is working on a tight budget, but I want to do a wall series with multiple Detour prints, it's an available option. Or you might have a new collector that is, starting to get into it. They still have access to your work. It may not be an original, but it's still putting your work out into the world. And on that note, I also want to talk to you about image licensing. So I'm not sure how many of you are familiar, but the idea with an image license is that I might see an original work by you, and I love it, and I want it in the client's collection. But I have 200 hotel rooms where this artwork has to go. Doing 200 originals is not feasible, typically from a budget perspective. So I might approach you about an image license. So that would mean you would, photograph or scan the work, produce a high-res digital file, and we would do a contract agreement that says, Denise, you have approval to print this out 200 times using this file. And in that case, someone like myself is wholly responsible for all of the production. You don't have to worry about any of that. your responsibility is, turning over that digital file. And in this case, you would be provided a lump sum. This is called an image licensing fee. And so, think about that as well when you're looking at your pricing list. And then lastly, I just wanted to share this idea of expanding your presence. So thinking about other websites like Fine Art America, Etsy, Art, these are used every day by professionals like myself. Again, they usually offer original art or reproduction art. And what I love about these websites is it allows me to really tailor my search by keywords, because the website has already done all of that for me on the back end. So if you're a textile artist and I type in textile, your work has likely been tagged, or you tag it yourself so that it can show up as a potential result. So I think through looking at grants and residencies, thinking about a reproductive practice for your art, image licensing, and then getting your art on websites even outside of your personal one are all ways that you can expand your practice. And those are my 5 tips. So with that, I'll open up the floor to questions from you all, from Adam.
So as an art consultant at 9.arts, do you have a lot of opportunity to utilize gallery design skills?
In what way?
Do you design spaces that you're curating for?
Oh, okay. No. So typically, let's say that there's a hospitality project. The client has already hired or is hiring in tandem with us an interior designer. And so that person is responsible for all the finishes in the room. We're responsible then for the art that's going up on the walls, on the shelves, that kind of thing. But we like to work in tandem. We definitely want to be in collaboration. Our philosophy is, let's not be too matchy-matchy. We want things to feel cohesive, though. And so we'll think about color palettes and other finishes in the room as we're thinking about the art program.
I was wondering what you find more fulfilling about your practice and what challenges you faced.
Sure. The most fulfilling is working with the artist, especially when it comes to maybe emerging artists, where they're kind of just getting their start. This could be a break for them. And I'm helping them get their work out into the world. I think some of the biggest challenges I face are probably more on the production and logistics side of things, trying to get the boom lift to the site. Oh, we've got to power wash the paint drips, handling like the aftermath of an installation or during the installation of a commission process. Things pop up that you maybe hadn't planned for. So you just have to be ready to act. Other questions?
How many projects would you say that you're working on at a time?
How many, what's that?
Sorry, how many projects are you working on at a time normally?
It can vary. I mean, it could be anywhere from maybe 10 to 15 projects. And each project is unique in terms of its scope. So, for example, I'm working with the UNC Charlotte Marriott. We've got 20 different public spaces. We're working to populate art within 230 plus guest rooms. So that's pretty large scale. But then I also just started a project for a luxury high-rise here in Denver, where we're going to be doing one art location, but it's a 13-story high exterior mural. So something like that might seem of less scale, but actually it will require some heavy lifting. We'll bring lots of options to the client. Here are some artists that we think would be a great fit. Go into that design process. So no project is the same, I will say that.
Could you speak on the difference between an art director and a curator?
Mm-hmm. So with my background and understanding of art director, it might have different applications in other companies, but at an ad agency, the art director is going to be responsible for maybe taking something that gets sketched on a napkin at a cocktail bar, like they have this idea for a visual, for a concept, but then getting it translated into digital format. Or how does this look on a billboard? How does this look on TV or commercial? And so they're responsible for the ideation of that concept. You know, think about the Nike swoosh. Someone came up with an art director came up with the Nike swoosh. My role is more helping to take someone else's vision and further it along. So I'm not creating the art. I'm not concepting the art, but I'm advocating for the artist. I'm guiding them if we're doing commission, because I have all the background of what the client wants. And so I'm able to feed that to the artist so that they can think about those things as they're creating.
How does your role at 9.arts differ from the acquisitions coordinator role at 9.arts?
So in my role, I'm responsible for pulling together the art proposal and presenting that to the client and getting the client through the point of purchase. But once they say, yeah, we want all this great art, then it will get handed off to our acquisitions team to do the purchasing and to do the final installation. So they'll be on site at the hotel coordinating with the vendors that they've hired in order to put art on the wall. And at that point, I might be involved for a visual sign off. Yep, that's where we want the art to go. But really, that's in the responsibility of that acquisition coordinator to help facilitate the purchase and then ultimately the installation. Meanwhile, I've gone back and I'm working with more clients on new projects and trying to sell more art. These are great questions. Thank you so much. Is there anything you want me to go back on in terms of the slides?
Denise, I'm curious.
Oh, sorry, Adam, go ahead.
I was just curious if you've seen a lot of things change given the current pandemic. Mm-hmm. And from your perspective, how has it, affected artists in getting these commissions and working with clients and vice versa? If you've seen kind of a decrease in clients right. reaching out to want to work with artists on installations and commissions.
Right. We have seen both. We've seen projects put on hold, but also projects just taken off and continuing to move forward. And in that case, the funding or the financing for the project was able to get in before the pandemic hit. So things are moving forward. I mean, I'm still working on multiple projects of different variety. Like I just said, I'm starting this 13-story high mural. So work is moving forward. I don't doubt that it's a challenging time for artists. It's probably that much more competitive out there. And I think all these tips can help mitigate some of that. But just continuing to evolve your practice. I saw an artist friend back in Chicago who is now offering sessions. She's an advanced artist, so she's offering sessions for other artists to either look at their portfolios, help them with their marketing. So think about how you can take your skill set and pivot it in a different way during this time as well.
Has the proposal and/or application process changed at all with artists?
In what way?
I mean, considering, social distancing and people having to basically live virtually, I mean, has that changed a lot of the implementation of the proposal?
I think that artists who were relying on a public studio space where maybe they rent, that's been tough. But I know artists that are now setting up home studios. In terms of the design process, what's nice about that is often it could be sketches or things done on the computer. So the actual construction or building of it that might require a studio can be postponed slightly. But no, I haven't seen that. I haven't seen that be an issue. And then as it comes to installation, we are adhering to all the codes and regulations in terms of temperature checks, mask, distancing, but we're still able to continue business as usual in terms of installations.
Do you have any suggestions or advice for artists to stay recession proof? Because that's something that's become really clear. Like, how do you sustain yourself during this time if your practice is creating and selling work?
Yeah.
Or being in public spaces?
Yeah. I think that using the time to create and to maybe discover new things about your practice that you didn't know before can be a real opportunity with all this time on our hands. Like I mentioned, thinking outside of the box. So what of your skill set can be adapted to different roles as well? You might have to hustle a little and have a couple different things going on in order to sustain yourself. I wish I could offer a recession-proof solution, but I just think keeping yourself moving forward. It's easy to get discouraged. It's easy to get down right now, but use this time to nurture your practice and to be inspired. We have just completed a micro grant program called Andra Tutto Bene, and this is Everything's Going to Be Okay. And so we reached out and we had this platform where artists could submit artworks that had this phrase embedded into the artwork, and then they were put into a random selection, and we were doing several winners each week, and they would get $250 via Venmo. So keep yourself, looking for those opportunities where companies like myself want to support and see that creative development through a time like this.
Denise, I have a quick question. You mentioned earlier about the business side of doing your work, and you mentioned the pricing structure of your work. Do you have suggestions for students to be able to cross-check, how much their work might be worth?
That's a good question. I think talking to other recent grads or maybe artists that are 2 to 5 years out could be a great place to start. They could have them look at their portfolio and help evaluate a pricing structure. You could look online at other artists that are doing similar work and see how they're pricing it. I think those would be my top 2 kind of recommendations.
Thank you.
But again, thinking about, time and labor, if you were to put a dollar amount on an hourly rate, what is your time worth? $150, $200, $75? So calculating that into the price of the work as well.
So Denise, what would you recommend kind of the big first steps be right now for a student who is still in college who does want to pursue a career as a professional artist, what can they be doing now that, once they graduate, whether they go to grad school or choose a different path, but what could they be doing now to kind of lay that foundation that once they're out of college, they can build on?
Step one is having your portfolio tidy and ready to go. So if you haven't taken, beauty shots of your work, get started. Start documenting all the work that you've made. And then again, with the details that I talked about before, so that you're not scrambling when you have been asked, oh, let's go get coffee. I'd love to see your portfolio. This can happen on a computer, an iPad. It doesn't have to be like the old fashioned bringing in the portfolio case. And you have time now to do that. So don't scramble. You want to spend the time when someone asks you to go to coffee, you want to spend time preparing your thoughts, not trying to scramble to get your work together. So I think that's step one, is organizing your portfolio. And step two is just to start networking, reaching out to your professors, to other artists that you respect. Ask someone, can I buy you a cup of coffee, and just learn about other people's journeys. As I've shown today, mine was not a straight path. I did not know what art consulting was until I met that consultant in Chicago. So exposing yourself to as many conversations as possible, I think, only puts you to be a more informed artist and to know what's available to you.
Would you have any different advice for a student who's pursuing a career in curation?
That's a good question. We've got an associate curator whose background was in fine art. So she started as, I believe, an intern or a studio assistant. My department is called the studio, and kind of worked her way into this role. So I think looking for opportunities where maybe this skill set can be used. So it might be, and she also had gallery assistance background. So working in a gallery, working for an artist, an established artist, anything that's going to help you start to interface in a client role, I think would be really helpful. So obviously in a gallery, you've got customers coming in that you might greet, and then it gets handed off to the gallerist to have a more formal discussion. And as an artist assistant, you might be taking their phone calls or helping respond to their communications to someone like myself. So you're starting to get experience that way. And then I know consultancies are kind of far and few between. They might be smaller companies. So maybe they can't hire you full time, but I spent my free time shadowing this art consultant in Chicago. So maybe you can dedicate a few hours a week, and then they hear of something that helps connect you into a more formal role. And be ready to move, maybe.
And if I may add to that, I always encourage students to also volunteer. I mean, museums and galleries are always looking for help, and they certainly want to bring someone in who is genuinely interested in art and the work.
Yeah.
And you might not be getting paid with money, but you're getting paid with experience, and it adds to that networking that Denise has been talking about.
Mm-hmm. Great point.
Does anyone else have any questions?
And if you think of something, these are great questions. And if you think of something after, maybe Adam, you could kind of consolidate questions and send them over to me, and I'd be happy to answer. So.
Sure.
But yes, we do have a position open right now, our acquisitions coordinator. So it's being opened up as a remote position as well. So you don't necessarily have to live in Denver to do it. And LinkedIn, I meant to mention, part of establishing your professional voice and your online presence is having a LinkedIn account. So if you're not familiar, get a profile set up. Can be really kind of brief right now if you don't have a ton of experience, but just being able to use LinkedIn as a tool for searching for jobs. You can search by keyword, geography, company specific. So I'd highly recommend getting your professional presence established in that way. And yes, connect with me.
Thank you for all the information.
Oh, you're so welcome. Thank you for joining, and I wish everyone the best of luck. And I know you're going to do great things. So can't wait to see on LinkedIn what happens as you move through the years.